What happens when a man who was once available, once easy to read, once always reaching out, stops talking? Not because he's angry, not because he's hurt, but because he's done. He's no longer chasing, no longer checking up, no longer replying. That silence, it hits differently. It shakes her in a way no loud words ever could. Because the one thing she never expected was for you to vanish, not to play games, but to evolve. And once you disappear, with calm, with strength, and with purpose, you become the most dangerous version of yourself. A man she can't figure out, a man she can't reach, a man she can't control. This is not just about breakups, this is about transformation. Today, we're diving deep into what really happens in her mind when she realizes you're not coming back. This isn't about revenge, this is about reclaiming your soul. You are about to become untouchable. And if you stay with me until the end, I promise, you won't be the same man who clicked play. If this message hits your heart, and you know this truth needs to reach more men, support this channel. Your support isn't just clicks, it's how we keep this content alive for the next man who's on the edge and needs to hear these words at 2 a.m. Together, we make power and healing accessible. Let's change lives. 1. She expected you to chase. Throughout the relationship, whether you realized it or not, she had a silent kind of control over you. Not through love, not through respect, but through calculated emotional patterns. She didn't need to say much. Her actions spoke for her. A few days of going cold and you'd start spiraling. She'd ignore a message or suddenly become distant and you'd begin overthinking, doubting yourself, questioning what you did wrong. She could post a photo with another guy or casually mention someone she used to date, and it would make your stomach drop. You'd rush to text her, trying to reassure her that you were the one, that you were still here, still invested. She'd cry during arguments, even if she started the fire, and you'd forget your own pain in an instant, folding under guilt, under the pressure to fix it, to be the bigger man. These weren't coincidences, they were patterns. They were quiet power moves, and for a long time, they worked. You see, when someone knows that no matter what they do, you'll be there, they lose the incentive to treat you with care. You were always the one reaching out, always the one compromising, always the one trying to hold things together. She knew that she could test boundaries, push buttons, even emotionally pull away, and you'd still show up. And that's not love, that's control. Emotional manipulation isn't always loud. Sometimes it's subtle. Sometimes it looks like her being silent, just long enough for you to question everything, then giving you just enough affection to keep you hooked. And back then, it worked. Because you hadn't realized your worth yet. You were operating from fear, from emotional dependence, from the belief that losing her would mean losing everything. You thought love meant fighting for someone, even if they weren't fighting for you. But now, everything is different. You don't chase anymore. You don't respond to cold shoulders with warm apologies. You don't break at the first sign of distance. In fact, you don't even notice, because your focus is no longer on her. You've turned inward. You've stopped waiting for her text and started building a morning routine. You've traded late-night overthinking for early morning discipline. You've gone from scrolling her socials to scrolling through your purpose, your goals, your mission. If you were not the same man who used to beg for attention, the man who used to write long, emotional texts trying to explain himself is gone. That energy, that desperation, it's not in your heart anymore. It's in your grind. It's in the book you're reading, the weights you're lifting, the money you're stacking, the life you're finally creating. She's not losing a boyfriend anymore. She's witnessing something far more uncomfortable for her ego. She's watching a man become a force. She expected a response. She expected tears. She expected to see her effect on you. But what she got instead was your stillness, your indifference, your evolution. And that's when it hits her. The sadness doesn't come first. The panic does. Because when a woman builds her identity on the assumption that you'll always come back, your growth is not just a breakup, it's a collapse of her illusion. Suddenly, you are not hers to toy with. You're not available for emotional games. You're not broken, confused, or weak. You're still. You're focused. You're sovereign. And that's terrifying to someone who only knew how to connect through control. She didn't expect this version of you, the one who doesn't argue, who doesn't explain, who doesn't need to be heard just to be at peace. She never imagined you would one day look at your phone, see her name, and feel nothing. Not because you hate her, but because you've grown, because you've detached, because her chaos no longer feels like home. That moment when she realizes she can no longer reach you, that you're not emotionally waiting in the background, it breaks her. not because she loves you, but because she no longer owns you. And for the first time in the relationship, maybe even in her life, she is completely powerless. Her mind breaks before her heart does. When a woman loses a man who was emotionally present, emotionally consistent, and emotionally accessible, the very first thing that begins to unravel isn't her heart. It's her sense of control. Her heart, ironically, may not even register the loss right away. That's because what hurts her first, what truly disorients her, is realizing she can no longer predict you. That is what breaks her, mentally. For the entire course of the relationship, she had you figured out. She knew how you'd react when she ignored your message. She knew what words to use to make you question yourself. She knew when to go cold, when to breadcrumb, when to come back with just enough attention to reignite your attachment. She understood the rhythms of your emotional vulnerability like clockwork. You were, in her mind, a system that she could manipulate, a pattern she could repeat, a loop she could restart whenever it served her. But now, that loop is broken, and not in a dramatic attention-seeking kind of way. No outbursts, no "I'm done" messages, just silence. The kind of silence that doesn't wait for a reply, the kind that doesn't bait a reaction, the kind that means something. This isn't the kind of silence that says, "I'm hurt, please talk to me." It's the kind that says, "I've healed enough to walk away." That is where her mental framework begins to collapse, because now she's not just wondering what you're feeling. She has no clue. And that is deeply unsettling for someone who built her entire sense of safety around your emotional predictability. So she starts doing what you used to do. She checks your social media every morning, not for love, but for clues. She scrolls through old messages, not for nostalgia, but for answers. She replays old voice notes, stalks your recent follows, zooms into your Instagram stories trying to decode who you're with or where you've been. And no matter how deep she digs, she finds nothing. You've posted nothing cryptic, no sad quotes, no subtext, no indirect shout-outs. It's as if you've disappeared, not from the internet, but from her story. That terrifies her, because in this digital world, silence isn't just the absence of noise, it's the presence of control, and she no longer has it. Now her mind is consumed by questions she can't answer. Did he ever love me? Was he pretending to care? Is he with someone else? Did I matter at all? But the question that stings the most, the one that repeats itself in her mind with haunting clarity, is, what if he was the one? And unlike the other questions, that one doesn't go away with a distraction. It doesn't get silenced with attention from someone new. Because that question isn't about love, it's about loss of power. You see, when someone loses love, they grieve. But when someone loses control, they panic. They spiral. They question their own worth. And that's exactly what's happening to her. She thought she was irreplaceable. She thought she could pull back whenever she wanted, and you'd still be there. But now, for the first time, she feels like she lost something she may never get back. And the worst part? You didn't slam the door. You didn't humiliate her. You didn't expose her. You just stopped trying. That's what breaks her. Not the loss of your presence, but the realization that her presence no longer has any power over you. Her identity, whether she admits it or not, was partially built around how much space she occupied in your mind. She drew validation from your attention. She built emotional confidence from your constant availability. Now that you've gone emotionally sovereign, now that you've decided to pull your energy back, she's left with a mirror. And in that mirror, she sees something she tried to avoid for a long time. Herself, not the filtered version. The real, raw, flawed, and often selfish self. And when the reflection gets too loud, too honest, too painful, that's when the mind starts to break. This is the power of true detachment. It doesn't scream. It doesn't fight. It doesn't beg. It simply walks away, not out of hatred, but out of clarity. Not out of spite, but out of self-worth. And that's what destroys her more than anything you could ever say. Because now, she's the one obsessing. Now, she's the one overthinking. Now, she's the one who doesn't know what to do. And that's when the shift is complete. The power dynamic has flipped entirely. You are no longer the man who seeks answers. You are the man who became one. 3. Your silence becomes her mirror. In the past, your presence gave her comfort, not always in a healthy or loving way, but in a way that made her feel safe in her position. even when she didn't treat you right, even when she pulled away emotionally or withheld affection. She knew deep down that you would come back. She may not have said it out loud, but it was there, in her tone, in her timing, in her silence. She knew that you loved deeply, that you were committed, that your heart was loyal to a fault. And that loyalty, in her mind, became a license to test you, to push you, to take you for granted. She had become so used to your presence that it no longer felt like a privilege. It became a guarantee, and guarantees get taken for granted. But when you withdrew, not just physically, but emotionally and spiritually, she felt it in a way she never anticipated. This wasn't a short-term silence. This wasn't you going quiet so she'd come chase you and everything could reset. This wasn't you sulking, waiting to be noticed. This was different. There were no passive-aggressive messages, no attempts to explain your side, no loud declarations about being done. You simply stopped participating. You stopped showing up for someone who didn't show up for you. And that kind of silence, it doesn't just sting, it reflects. Now she's alone with herself. And for someone who depended on your energy to define her importance, being alone with her own reflection is not peace, it's torment. Because that silence forces her to confront things she's tried to ignore for a long time. The way she dismissed your feelings during serious conversations. The way she made you feel like you were always too much or never enough. The passive-aggressive comments, the eye rolls, the cold stares, the flirtations with other men in front of you disguised as just being friendly, the gaslighting, the guilt-tripping, the power plays. Every single one of those moments begins to replay in her head, because there's no new interaction with you to drown it out. In your silence, the echo of her own behavior gets louder. She starts to replay things she brushed off before, the messages she left on read to get a reaction, the calls she didn't answer because she wanted to feel in control, the affection she withheld when you needed it most. She thought these were small things, power moves, ways to maintain her edge in the relationship. But now, as she sits in the space that your absence created, those moments begin to take shape. They're no longer just things that happened, they're signs of what she became. And for the first time, she has to face the version of herself that you experienced. The version that dismissed love, that manipulated care, that confused vulnerability for weakness. And what breaks her most is realizing that you're not coming back to help her make sense of it. She thought you would return and explain how you felt. She thought there would be one final conversation, one last message. But your silence doesn't come with closure. It comes with reflection. It comes with responsibility. And that's what she wasn't ready for. Because responsibility requires ownership. It means admitting that the man who gave her everything eventually gave up. Not because he stopped caring, but because he started respecting himself. She believed your presence was proof of her worth. She used it to validate her choices, her moods, her behavior. But now, your absence is a different kind of mirror. It doesn't show her who she was to you. It shows her who she chose to be when you needed her most. And that's a mirror very few people want to look into. It's not flattering. It doesn't preserve her ego. It exposes her. And exposure, without defense, leads to awareness. And awareness leads to regret. And regret, without redemption, turns into shame. And shame, when held in silence, becomes unbearable. You didn't have to raise your voice. You didn't need to justify your decision. You didn't need to convince her of your worth. Your silence did it all. It spoke louder than any confrontation. It reflected everything she refused to see when you were trying to make it work. And that's the power you've stepped into, not through dominance, but through discipline. You stopped making noise and started making space for your peace, for your growth, and for the kind of woman who will never make you question your value again. Your silence isn't absence, it's clarity, it's freedom. It's the mirror she never wanted to look into, but now she can't unsee what's staring back. 4. You become the mystery she can't solve. In the beginning, when you go quiet, she doesn't take it seriously. She assumes you're just having a moment. Maybe you're sulking, trying to get attention, playing some emotional chess game that will end the same way it always does, with you coming back. That's how it's always gone before, hasn't it? You'd get upset, she'd pull away, you'd distance yourself for a bit, and then the cycle would restart. She'd see you view her story, maybe like a post, or send a message late at night after a few drinks, and the game would begin again. It's what she expects. It's what she's seen from you before. So at first, she's calm. She watches the hours pass, then days. But when days start turning into a week, and then another, and you're still silent, something begins to shift inside her. Doubt creeps in. Not because you said anything, but because you didn't. There are no messages, no passive likes on her content, no cryptic quotes on your profile meant to make her wonder, no emotional outbursts, no attempt to get her attention. Just absolute quiet. Emotionally, digitally, energetically. And that terrifies her far more than anger ever could. Because anger is familiar, anger is manageable, anger means you still care. But silence? Silence means distance. And not just physical distance, but emotional and mental withdrawal. She's used to being able to read your next move. But now you've stepped out of the script. You're not doing what she thought you would. And the most disturbing part? You're not doing anything. She checks your story and sees nothing. Or worse, she sees signs of life without her. You're at the gym, working on your body, and it shows. You're smiling with people she doesn't recognize. You're focused, composed, centered. The man she expected to see broken and begging is nowhere to be found. You look lighter, sharper, and even if you're not posting much, what you do post radiates strength, discipline, peace. She thought losing you would damage you, that you'd unravel without her. But instead, you've become someone she barely recognizes. You're not reacting to her moves because, truthfully, she's no longer a factor in your decisions. You've shifted your entire focus inward. That lack of response creates a vacuum in her mind. At first, it was confusion. Then it turns into curiosity, then obsession, because now she needs to understand. She needs to know what you're thinking, where you are emotionally, who you're with, whether or not you miss her. And because she no longer has access to you, emotionally or mentally, her imagination fills in the blanks. And imagination is a dangerous thing when fueled by ego and regret. Every unanswered question becomes a haunting. Every absence of proof becomes a potential sign that you've replaced her, outgrown her, forgotten her. You've become unpredictable. And that, more than anything, destroys the image she had of herself. She used to believe she had you under control, that you'd always be around in some form. Maybe not as a partner, but at least as someone orbiting her, checking in, emotionally available, waiting for the moment she wanted you again. But now, you're no longer in orbit. You're on another planet. And it's not that you're hiding. It's that you no longer care to be seen. You're living, not performing, evolving, not proving. And now, she's left with an emotional void where you used to be. She tries to figure out what happened, what changed, what broke the loop. But the truth is, you changed. You stopped waiting for closure and started building clarity. You stopped defining your value through her attention and started measuring it by your purpose. You started honoring yourself. And now, the man she used to manipulate has become the man she can't reach. Not physically, not emotionally, not psychologically. You've become the mystery that keeps her awake at night. Because mysteries are not just confusing, they're consuming. She checks your page at 2 a.m., hoping for a sign. She replays old messages, listens to voice notes trying to catch what she missed. And with every piece of silence you leave behind, her confusion turns to longing, her longing into regret, and her regret into obsession. You're no longer the man who chases, you're the man who got away. Not because you played a game, but because you 5. You're building a life without her. While she's stuck overthinking what went wrong, checking your profile at night, and trying to figure out why you haven't called, you're out here evolving into the kind of man she never truly believed you'd become. Every single day that you don't reach out, don't text, don't react, you reinforce one message with unshakable clarity. I don't need you to be whole anymore. You don't need her to feel valuable. You don't need her to feel strong. You don't need her to feel like a man. Because your self-worth is no longer tied to whether or not she approves of you. It's no longer dependent on whether she validates you. You've taken your identity back from someone who only knew how to love it on her terms. Your mornings are no longer shaped by anxiety or hope that she might text back. Now, they're driven by structure, by focus, by a hunger to grow. You wake up with clarity, not confusion. You set your goals and attack them. You're not rolling over in bed checking your phone for a good morning text. You're rolling out of bed and checking your calendar, your progress, your targets. You've replaced overthinking with action, doubt with discipline, waiting with working. And in doing so, you've started crafting a version of yourself that even you didn't know was possible. You're reading again, not for escapism, but for self-mastery. You're feeding your mind with wisdom on leadership, on emotional strength, on finance, on health. You're lifting not just weights, but your own standards. You're no longer pushing for her attention. You're pushing your body past its limits. You're working on your dreams, your projects, your peace. You've stopped seeing love as the solution to your problems and started realizing that you were the answer all along. You were the foundation. You were the mission. And you just forgot because you were too busy chasing someone who made you feel like love was something you had to earn. Now, you're building a life that's designed to support not just your future, but your freedom. The man you're becoming isn't bitter. He's better. He's sharper. He's clearer. He's more composed, more aware, more focused. She watches from the outside, maybe silently, maybe through fake profiles, maybe through mutual friends. And every post you make, every subtle milestone you hit, every new muscle you build, every new skill you learn, it all whispers the same truth into her ear. You didn't break him, you built him. And for a woman who used to have emotional power over you, watching you rise without her isn't just painful, it's paralyzing. Because now she's witnessing your transformation. But she's no longer part of the story. She was the catalyst, maybe, but she's no longer in the picture. And that hurts in a different kind of way. Because it means the version of you that she gets to see now, the most powerful, most focused, most fulfilled version. You're not doing it for her. You're doing it in spite of what she put you through. The peace you radiate now, that didn't come from closure. That came from cutting the noise, from letting go of people who drained your energy, from choosing solitude over disrespect. You're not calm because you stopped caring about her. You're calm because you started caring about yourself. You're not distant because you want to hurt her. You're distant because you finally realized that loving someone should never cost you your identity. And every day you stay silent, every day you build, every day you keep your head down and stay focused. You create more distance between the man you used to be and the man she thought she could always have access to. She's realizing, day by day, that the version of you who begged, who cried, who over-explained, who settled, that man is gone, replaced by someone who doesn't need revenge to feel powerful, someone who doesn't need validation to feel worthy, someone who doesn't need her love to love himself. You're building a life now where you don't just survive, you thrive. A life so full of purpose, passion, and inner peace that if she were to walk back into it today, she wouldn't even recognize the man she once knew. And she wouldn't know how to reach him, because he's no longer reachable through guilt, shame, or emotional manipulation. He's grounded, he's healed, he's growing, and most of all, he's free. You didn't walk away to hurt her. You walked away to find yourself. You stopped playing a game she was winning. You chose dignity over drama, silence over screaming, progress over pain. And now, she's left with memories and regrets, while you're walking in purpose and clarity. That's what happens when a man becomes emotionally untouchable, when he stops chasing and starts leading. And the best part? You didn't have to yell. You didn't have to post revenge stories. You didn't have to prove anything. You just went quiet and kept building. And that silence, it speaks louder than anything you've ever said. If this message spoke to you, comment below with unstoppable. That tells me you made it to the end, that you're serious about rising, about becoming the kind of man who doesn't chase validation, but builds legacy. And if you believe other men need to hear this, support the channel, subscribe, like, share it with a brother, a friend, a son. Because every time you support this channel, you make these words accessible to the men who need them most. You help spread the message that you can rise from anything. You make strength contagious, and for that, I respect you deeply. Stay silent, stay sharp, stay unstoppable.